Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Braden, Tim, Second Legacy. You are amazing, and thank you so much for showing up. We have some NFA destroying breaking news that's coming out of Kansas. This is something we told you may happen. Well, guys, the DOJ and the ATF took the bait, and we're going to walk through it right now. I hope they didn't like that NFA because this has some serious potential. Of course, everything will be linked. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on if you were enjoying this witty back and forth banter in a two-way fashion, utilizing sarcasm and humor in the greatest way for freedom possible. Let's get it. Tim, remember that thing in Kansas? Remember that whole, what was it called? Machine guns? Remember that whole thing?
Here's a funny story. So I grew up in Kansas, and back then we didn't have concealed carry. Every city could pass its own gun regulations. There's no supremacy clause. Machine guns were banned. Short barrel rifles were banned. Suppressors were banned. Couldn't have anything. And then it changed. And then they legalized the ownership of suppressors and machine guns and SBRs, all that stuff. They are now a constitutional carry state. So there's been kind of this flip in Kansas, and now they may be the actual state that gets the NFA repealed. I mean,
it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. Quite the turn of events. This one, Tim, I mean, listen, I'm going to put a feather in our cap for a second. You remember when the Kansas ruling came out and they said that the Bruin decision precludes bans on machine guns and says, nah, you can't do that? Remember that? And we covered it and we were like, ooh, this could be a thing. Are they really going to take the bait? Yeah, they took the bait. Here we go. Number one, appeal filed in Kansas machine gun case. Okay, so the DOJ couldn't let it go. Couldn't let well enough alone. Here we go.
They're going to take it all the way to the top.
They're going to the top, baby. Kansas, this is number two. The U.S. government is appealing a ruling in the case of a Kansas man who was charged with possessing machine guns. Last month, U.S. District Court of Kansas dismissed the case. We covered it here on Second Legacy. United States Attorney for the District of Kansas, Kate E. Brobacher, filed a motion to appeal the ruling under the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit on Monday. The action came 6 days prior to the 30-day appeal window. They were running out of time, Tim. You know they were hand-wringing on this one. Oh, my God.
Like, what do we do? What do we do? Because this could undo everything. Yeah.
This could be it.
So where does the 10th Circuit stand?
10th is kind of hit or miss.
Yeah. So, I thought they were kind of...
Yeah, it's kind of medium. But here's where it gets interesting on this, guys. If you've been watching these things on these court cases, this is how the Bruin decision started. This is how the Rahimi case started. This is how the Looper Enterprises with a bunch of herring fishermen destroyed Chevron deference forever. This is how it all starts. In a district court that gets a favorable ruling, the government says, that's not cool, I like my power, and it starts the process. The 10th Circuit, what's the stop after the 10th Circuit, Tim?
That'd be SCOTUS. So
that would indeed be SCOTUS. A machine gun case at a 10th Circuit level?
Yep.
Ooh.
That's all we need is conflicting decisions like this. And it could pique their interests. We may get another gun case, like the 10th in the last 5 years. It's crazy.
Exactly, which is extremely rare.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you guys are about 45 years old plus, this is something you've never experienced before. Like, welcome to the party, baby, because we are driving full force. You got FPC, GOA. I'm not even going to say the other three when the national one. That doesn't even count. You got the Second Amendment Foundation. We're driving, baby.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here, because the Supreme Court, you know, if the 10th Circuit reverses the decision, the Supreme Court could just set it out like it normally does, and nothing happens. So don't get too excited.
True. I'm not too excited, but
I'm hopeful.
You got to admit though, it is a good thing that it's in the path that it's in right now. That's a good thing.
If the 10th Circuit does something totally off the wall and upholds the decision,
what happens?
Well, then the government has to appeal to the SCOTUS.
Exactly. Then the DOJ has got to take another case to SCOTUS. Okie dokie. So here's some time frames, just so you guys know what kind of time frame to expect here. Because if machine gun bans are actually, not constitutional, the NFA is pretty much pointless. A 90-year-old law gets smoked. All right. So let's check this out. Usually, the petitioner's brief is due 40 days after everything gets set up, Jackson said. After that, the respondent gets 30 days to file a brief. In the meantime, the court sets the case for argument, which usually takes around 3 months, more or less, from the time the last brief is filed. So about 3 months before we see something on this again. According to Jackson, the appeal process could take 5 to 6 months, but could take longer or shorter. He said the 10th Circuit has the fastest resolution time of all federal courts, but wasn't expecting movement anytime soon. So you're talking about probably half
post-election.
Yeah, post-election for sure. And The thing you have to understand, what's in the balance here, guys. So I've shown you the timing. We've talked about the original instance. This is kind of it right here at the tail end of number 3. In the original order, the one that we covered, the case, the court dismissed the case after it found, quote, the plain text of the Second Amendment does not cover the possession of machine guns. That's why the DOJ and the ATF appealed, because they can't have that standing. No. Imagine that precedent, Tim.
Yeah. But I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with shall not be infringed. So it does actually address machine guns, because it says you're not going to infringe on their rights. And infringement means anything that you might do. And the whole thing, I mean, for the Supreme Court, they've decided in previous cases that were unrelated to the Second Amendment that you can't tax constitutionally protected rights, in particular where they were dealing with the newspaper in this case. And so that feeds into this as well, because the NFA sets up a tax scheme for you to pay a tax before you can exercise your rights. And the Supreme Court, if they're going to be consistent, would have to strike it down on those grounds alone, right?
Right.
So, I mean, they could perhaps get away with some sort of forced registration. If this gets shot down, they could do some sort of forced registration of owners and guns and just not charge a tax. And then they would have to fight that in court as well. But
then there'd be another issue, right?
Right. So, because then that goes against other laws that are pre-existing, where you're not supposed to be able to track gun owners and their property. So, I mean, it's set up for a good resolution. It's just, will the courts do the right thing?
Right.
And
will
that's
they?
Always the pivotal question.
That's the thing. But yeah, I mean, if you look at this, you've got now the Bruin decision, and you have, I don't remember the name of that actual decision with the newspaper. I mean, it's a precedent.
Yeah, it's like from 1912 100%. Or something. Yeah, it goes way back.
It's very established. I don't remember the name of the case. But you have that one where you can't tax the right, and then you also have the Bruin decision where you basically can't, if there was nothing at the founding, you can't do it now. I mean, good Lord, history, texture, and tradition, that NFA is not looking good. Like, gun controllers, they have a reason to be worried. I'm going to be honest. Like, they really do.
I mean, I imagine there's panic going through ATF right now, because they had to appeal this, because if they let it stand and it kind of goes from there and becomes precedent, well, that just basically unemploys a huge chunk of their people. Because they got to think how many people it takes to maintain a database that's not searchable, that Diddlebum pays extra for to keep it unsearchable. That's true. You have to send people in and manually go through data.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're not keeping an illegal registry.
No, they don't have one of those. They just happen to find the one random serial number from the one random location on paper once they sift through the billions of boxes by hand in 30 minutes. But it's not searchable. They're incredible little leprechauns. Actually, they're leprechaun humans, and they go through and they're like, I feel like it's just a box right here, and then they get it and they nail it every time. It's really incredible.
Yep, all without a searchable database.
Not a single one.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, dude, if that's not a cartoon waiting to happen, little ATF leprechauns. Oh my God. Anyway, let's keep going. Number 4. This is I love this so much. The decision by Judge John Brooms hinged on the Bruin and Rahimia requirement to demonstrate historical analogs that prove the ban is consistent with the nation's history. Brooms found the government had not met its burden to prove historical analogs. It's because there aren't any. That's the dirty little secret. Right. There aren't any. It doesn't exist. Nope. That's why they are hitting Clarence Thomas so hard on he's corrupt. Why they're hitting Alito on the fact that the flag flew upside down. You know, like all these stupid here's why. Because they want to undermine this stuff right here, because they have nothing other than attacking. Oh, they suck.
Yeah. The Second Amendment is a real problem for them. You know, my entire life,
bad.
The Second Amendment was just kind of this soft, it was viewed as like this soft suggestion, like, yeah, you can keep guns. Well, we can kind of take them away anytime we want. Right. And that was just kind of the premise we lived under, which is like, we got to fight because we get the wrong politician in there. We could lose our gun rights. And that's still true.
Still true.
Right.
Still true.
But the Second Amendment and the courts are finally stepping up and going, okay, hold on there, Cupcake. You know, and they're finally starting to rein in this government. This has been a lifetime coming for me. The whole Chevron deference thing was something I've been, vehemently opposed to for decades of my life. And to see that thing go up in smoke is amazing. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy to go through 30 years of just like, we may or may not, we got the 94 assault weapons ban in there. We could do it again, and thinking, man, we're just one election cycle away. And then now to see the courts finally standing up and saying, no, the Second Amendment's pretty darn clear. And the history and tradition side of it is the epic part of that decision. Because that takes it right back to the beginning and saying,
absolutely.
The onus is now on you to prove that these guns weren't protected by
that is forever Clarence Thomas will be dead, rotting in the ground, and he'll still be flicking them off with that part.
Yep. You're going to have to bury him with his rear end in the air so that all the gun grabbers come by and kiss his ass. Oh.
All right. So this is the last thing we'll say. That's what a great image that is. This is number 5. This is from the actual decision. Quote, to summarize, in this case, the government has not met its burden under Bruen and Rahimi to demonstrate through historical analogs that regulation of the weapons at issue in this case are consistent with the nation's history of firearms regulation. Indeed, the government has barely tried to meet that burden, the case document read. You know why, guys, that they don't even try to meet that burden? Because it doesn't exist.
That's right. They can't do it.
They cannot. That's why you literally, guys, you understand what's happening right now. And Tim and I have talked about this so many times. You have the federal government of the United States through Merrick Garland, the DOJ, and the ATF through Steve Dettelbach, literally sending their Solicitor General, Elizabeth Prelogar, into court arguing that prior racism and religious discrimination is the history, text, and tradition for gun control.
Yep.
I mean,
because of our nation's history of racism and slavery, we got a right to take your guns away.
100%. Hey, guy, no, courts, it's okay. We can totally infringe upon gun frames and receivers because back in the 1600s, we discriminated against Catholics and Protestants, and they couldn't have guns. And of course, Native Americans, because of their birth and their heritage and who they were genetically, they couldn't have guns either. So we've done this before. It's okay. Honest to God, yep. Tactical machining case really existed. Yep. Oh, so bad, Tim. But that's what we got going.
The government has gone on for so many years with just the Supreme Court and the lower courts just rubber stamping everything they wanted to do, like the Chevron case, for example, to keep bringing up something that we've already talked about. People are familiar with it. And so they've rubber stamped the government and just they've enabled the government overreach my entire life. Yep. And so the government has to be panicking right now. This is why they want to stack the court. This is why they want to get rid of Clarence Thomas. This is why they're panicking out loud right now, is because the court's doing its job. It's standing in opposition to the federal government for once. And the federal government, the powers that be, all those unelected bureaucrats sitting in the shadows, they're freaking out because their entire livelihood is now hanging in the balance.
That's
and their
exactly
power.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
This could get ugly quick because when you take somebody's power away from them and they stomp their feet like children and they have weapons themselves, it can get ugly. So we got to be very, very careful here.
Yeah, they don't like it one bit.
We got to keep moving forward and go Supreme Court.
I'll be honest, Tim, just kind of in conclusion to this, what you just said, when the Bruen decision came down, that was in the summer of, I want to say 2021. It might have been 2022. Forgive me if I get the year wrong. But I remember thinking, the potential on this is crazy good. I did tons of videos on it. Then they started coming down with all these different rulings and kind of like they opened the floodgates and these things started popping. When the Chevron deference case came down through herring fishermen.
Yeah.
Dude, like legitimately, the Supreme Court said no longer anything going forward. You can't just leave it up to executive bureaucratic fiat to determine the actual intention of what Congress meant because Congress left it purposely vague. They can't do that anymore. Any bit of legislation passed from here forward, guys, cannot be extraordinarily vague. And the bureaucracies can't just lead through bureaucratic fiat. It is literally Congress has to dictate what they want. It's so massive. I don't think everyone fully comprehends how big of a deal this is.
Yeah, it is. And it's finally, this late stage in my life, they're finally taking it seriously. And we're starting to see pushback. There's supposed to be separation of powers and checks and balances for a reason. And for most of my life, we had neither. It was just one hand, back in the other hand's play. And now we're finally having the courts do their job and stand in opposition to the government and their overreach. And it's glorious to watch. Thank you for watching Second Legacy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.